thank you to all of those who joined us for our centennial earlier in the week at Salve Regina. It was one of the highlights. We've often said the last should be the best, and it was the best. Everyone raved about the event, and the proof is in the pudding. I remember Senator Reid, who was kind enough to join us, said that he needed to be in and out by a certain hour, like 6:15, and I think it was 7:15, he was still there. He absolutely enjoyed the atmosphere, the company, the conversation, the people. It said an awful lot about the New England Council, so thank you for all of your support of the centennial gatherings that we've had in every New England state, but the highlight truly was last week, so this past week. So I just want to say thank you. This morning we're grateful to our member TD Bank, in fact, Cheryl McQuaid, who officially became a board member of the New England Council at our recent board meeting, and we are thrilled to have her because it's not just having the presence of TD, but her energy here, enthusiasm, and also her wise counsel is going to make the New England Council an even better organization. So we're truly grateful to have her part of the New England Council family. Today, the bank is again stepped up to the plate. They are so generous in being a corporate supporter throughout New England, and they just believe in being part of the community, and they want to support worthy causes. And again, they've selected New England Council as a worthy cause. We say thank you, thank you. And this morning's breakfast is sponsored by TD, so we just say thank you. And this morning we have Frank Caselli, who's the Regional VP Corporate Lending, who will introduce our very special guest in just one moment. But let me just take a moment to talk about the New England Council programs in the next couple of weeks. It's been a busy week. Many of you have either attended or have you watched some of our videos that we've done with different with the governor of New Hampshire just recently, Governor Ayotte this week, and then with Senator Reid, and now here this morning. This tells you how active the New England Council is, and we're not taking our foot off the gas at all. Just in the next couple of weeks, October 3rd, we'll be at Hartford with the governor, Governor Ned Lamont. Will be speaking to the New England Council. October 14th, we're back in Boston, Capitol Hill gathering with Representative Lori Trahan. And then, of course, less than 1 month away from our biggest event of the year, and I mean, somebody in the administration would say big, bold, it's gigantic. It's our 2025th centennial celebration on October 20th, and Larry Zabar has done an outstanding job in recruiting and getting supporters to participate in the celebration. We're close to having 2,000 people at our gathering. It's just extraordinary. 2,000, about 180 some sponsors, and so it's been a joy to see the support that we get from the New England Council members. So, but again, Larry would say I was remiss if I didn't say we have one table left, maybe two. That's it. So if anyone is interested, we'll be able to accommodate you. So we're looking forward to seeing you. And again, one of the highlights of our program on the October 20th is that we recognize some of the rising stars of the New England delegation, and to me, it's the recognition of the next leadership of New England. And today, we're delighted to let people know that 3 outstanding members of the New England congressional delegation. One happens to be from here, Rhode Island. Amo is going to be recognized as a rising star on our dinner. And Gabe is just an extraordinary individual. You know him. You know what he's done already. And he will be honored with a very special award that evening. But today, needless to say, we're honored that the other half of the Rhode Island delegation is here today, and that is Seth Magaziner, who, needless to say, you know better than I. He's done an incredible job representing not just your district and the state, but all of the New England congressional delegation members give such high marks to the representative that he's somebody that's serious, thoughtful, wants to work on some of these most pressing issues. He's always there to lend his support, his counsel, his advice, his advocacy. So he is somebody that you have chosen wisely, but let me just say, as somebody who works with the entire delegation, he gets very, very high marks. But a very formal introduction, I'm going to ask Frank Caselli of TD Bank to come forward and introduce our very special guest.
Thank you, Jim. Good morning, everyone. That was a weak Friday morning. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. All right, there you go. So it's my pleasure to welcome you all to today's breakfast. And TD Bank came to Rhode Island back in 2010, and we're so proud of what we've accomplished in the last 15 years. It's been great to serve and assist the citizens of Rhode Island, its small businesses, its not-for-profits, and corporations throughout the area grow and succeed. And as a matter of fact, we have a bunch of people from our team today here, so thank you for joining us today. And part of the team is our Rhode Island and Connecticut Market President, Steve Maroney. So again, thank you for being here with us today. It truly is a pleasure to work with that team each and every day. So we're a proud sponsor of the New England Council. It's our nation's oldest regional business organization. I'm not sure if anybody knew that, but congratulations to Jim and his staff on 100 years of the organization being founded in 1925. So thank you. The New England Council and TD Bank share ideas and responsibilities to bring issues forward for discussion that benefit all of us. This morning, I want to thank you for joining us, and we bring together elected officials, business leaders, community members, and friends for an important conversation about the future of our economy and our communities. At TD Bank, we believe strongly in building partnerships that help strengthen both local businesses and our communities. Part of that mission means maintaining an open dialogue with our elected leaders, who play a critical role in shaping the policies that impact growth, investment, and opportunity. This morning, we are honored to be joined by someone who has been a dedicated advocate for Rhode Island and the nation, and who works tirelessly on issues that matter deeply to our community. Congressman Seth Magaziner was treasurer of the state of Rhode Island from 2015 to 2022, and was elected to Congress in 2022. And serves on the Homeland Security Committee, where he is a ranking member of the Subcommittee on Counterterrorism, Law Enforcement, and Intelligence, as well as serving on the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Protection Committee, and serves on the Natural Resources Committee, where he's a member of the Energy and Mineral Resources and Water, Wildlife, and Fisheries Subcommittee. Hopefully I got that right, Congressman. At this time, it's my honor and privilege to introduce again Congressman Seth Magaziner and Jim Brett for a fireside chat, minus the fireplace, of course, from the New England Council. So thank you very much.
Well done.
Thanks, Frank.
Thank you. We have a couple of minutes to talk about some issues going on in Washington, but gives you an opportunity to think of your own questions for the congressman. But let's just start with, obviously, what's on everyone's mind in this room: the Red Sox. Can they?
Yeah.
We got one game to go, and if Houston loses and the Red Sox win, we're in the playoffs. So, what do you think?
Hope springs eternal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving right along. In just 4 days, the fiscal 2025 comes to an end. The Republicans are asking that we continue till mid-May, a clean extension. Your colleagues are saying, no, we're not going to support a clean extension unless you put language in there protecting some of the tax provisions of the ACA and other items that may affect an increase in health care. So where are the Democrats right now, Friday morning?
So let me say, first of all, thank you, Jim, and everyone from the New England Council for 100 years of impact, bringing together government, nonprofit, and the business communities across our region so that we can collaborate and learn from each other. I always come away from these meetings learning something, so I thank you all for that. Thank you, Frank, for the kind introduction. That was impressive. One of the things that you learn in Congress is that committees jostle with each other for jurisdiction, And so the names of the committees keep getting longer and longer as a result of them each all trying to kind of carve out more territory for themselves. And I'll get myself in trouble if I start calling out individual people, because there's a lot of friends and a lot of great leaders from Rhode Island here in the room. But our former Lieutenant Governor, Elizabeth Roberts, is here and is a good friend as well. So thank you all. Let me answer your question with this. There is a healthcare crisis in our state, our region, and our country right now. And we are at a breaking point. Like, the crisis isn't coming, the crisis is here. If you get insurance through your employer, which most people do, in Rhode Island, it was just announced that your rates are going to go up by anywhere from 13 to 22% next year. And when I say your rates, some of that might be eaten by your employer, but that's still a hit for your employer. That's if you're on commercial insurance for your employer, a 13 to 22% increase in your insurance premiums next year. If you get your insurance from the exchange, from HealthSource RI, your premiums are going to double next year. It's going to cost thousands of dollars more for health insurance for families. And of course, if you're on Medicaid, you're already going to be seeing huge cuts. Tens of thousands of Rhode Islanders, probably hundreds of thousands of people across New England are set to lose their health insurance through Medicaid. So no matter what kind of insurance you have, your costs are about to go up significantly if nothing is done. And this is a crisis that didn't have to happen. It happened because over the summer, Donald Trump and the Republicans in Congress passed a bill that cuts $1 trillion from Medicaid. And now they are set to let the ACA tax credits expire, which will cost hundreds of billions of dollars more in the coming years. So just taking a step back here, if you're taking over $1 trillion out of the healthcare system, of course costs are going to skyrocket, right? People are going to lose their insurance. Providers, nursing homes, hospitals are going to go out of business. And this is bad everywhere, but it's especially bad in Rhode Island, because in Rhode Island we were already dealing with a big healthcare challenge because we don't reimburse as much as neighboring states. And so our system is really on the brink here. And our position, the Democratic position, is we have to deal with this crisis now. Because if we wait, even if we wait weeks or months, it will be too late. People are going online. Open enrollment is about to start. People are going to go online. They're going to see these sky-high cost increases. They're going to get sticker shock, and they're not going to re-enroll. Or they're going to enroll in worse insurance with narrower coverage. And that means that revenue to the providers is going to go down. It means that there's going to be more uncompensated care. Like, people are going to be making these decisions in the next few weeks, in the next couple months, right? The enrollment decisions, budgeting decisions at hospitals and nursing homes, and maybe we have some represented here in the room today. They've got to make their decisions about what their staffing is going to look like for next year. So we have to deal with this now. We have to deal with this now. And so our position on the Democratic side is we are ready to vote for a bipartisan budget that keeps the government funded and meets the needs of the American people, but it has to include a health care fix. It has to include an extension of the ACA tax credits, and it should restore funding for Medicaid and for medical research as well, which is something else that never should have been cut. So that's our position. And interestingly, what you hear from the Republicans is they're not saying no, they're saying, well, we'll deal with it later, right? They haven't ruled out extending the ACA tax cuts. In fact, I think they know at some level that they're going to have to, right? Because we're heading into an election year, and having people's health insurance costs go up by 20% or double if they're on an exchange is not tenable for them. They know that. So they're saying, well, we'll pass the CR and we'll deal with it later. But that doesn't work for two reasons. Number one, as I just said, weeks and months count here because people are going to be making decisions about enrolling in insurance and staffing and all that. They're going to be making those decisions in the next few weeks and months. So we can't kick the can to the end of the year. A lot of the damage will have already been done. But second, they just cut $1 trillion from Medicaid, and we're supposed to just trust that they'll deal with this later? We can't. They have no credibility on this. And so that's our position here, is we will vote for and we're not asking for everything. There's a whole lot of other things that we don't like that the president is doing that we could be making an issue of, but we're not. We're saying we've got a healthcare crisis. It's got to be dealt with now. Let's deal with it now. Deal with it now, and we can pass a budget in a bipartisan way and move forward.
So as we meet here Friday morning, what do you think the chances are of a shutdown?
I mean, look, that's up to Trump and the Republicans. I mean, on the Democratic side, we're all going to work on Monday. Mike Johnson has canceled session, but every one of us, me, Gabe, the rest of the New England delegation, we're all going to show up to work in Washington on Monday, ready to work with the other side, ready to vote. If they choose not to do this, then that's on them. I mean, look, at the end of the day, they control the White House, the House, and the Senate floor. It's their decision whether we're going to fix this healthcare crisis now or not. And they need to get serious about this. I mean, you all know, you saw the news, there was a meeting scheduled in the Oval Office for President Trump, Leader Schumer, Leader Jeffries to solve this problem. Trump canceled the meeting at the last minute. Johnson canceled the House agenda for next week. But we're going to show up for work. We want to pass a funding bill that's bipartisan, that keeps the government open, that meets the priorities of the American people, but it's got to include a health care fix. Otherwise, it's going to be too late.
Are you worried about the government shutdown, that you're given the keys to the kingdom, and the president or the administration is talking about, unlike in previous shutdowns where employees were given a furlough, and then when the government reopened, they got their back pay, they're now talking firing federal employees if there's a shutdown, to put additional pressure on the Democrats to say, look what you're causing here. Thousands of employees are going to be losing their jobs.
Look, I mean, that's just hostage taking by the administration, right? What they're saying, explain what you just said. What they're saying is that even though no administration has ever done this in a shutdown before, we're going to fire a whole bunch of people. That's their decision if they do that. That's not our decision. But I also don't think they're going to do it for a couple of reasons. Number one, or at least not do it at scale. Russ Vought's argument is that he already has that authority. His argument from the beginning has been that through impoundment, he has the right to shut down any office, any agency, fire any federal worker who he wants. We disagree with that. The Supreme Court ruled against that back in the 70s, and now they're trying to get a new ruling. But, it's sort of, we view it as an empty threat because he's saying that he is going to do the thing that he already says he can do. And look, I mean, at the end of the day, I think the American people understand that that will be a choice that they are making because no other administration has done that in a shutdown before. That's their choice, not our choice.
Just give you a softball question in your reaction to the administration is thinking of changing the Pell Grant to the Trump Grant. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Not on our watch. No, I mean, it shows how toxic the culture has become, on the Republican side right now. And those of you who know me know, I'm not a hyper-partisan person, right? When I was state treasurer, I worked with people of all different ideologies. When, even in Congress, I've worked with Chip Roy on our stock trading ban. I've worked with other Republicans on other bills that I even had a bill with J.D. Vance when he was the senator from Ohio. He was the lead sponsor of a bill in the Senate on student loan relief for kids with disabilities, and I was the lead sponsor in the House. So I'm always willing to be bipartisan, but let's call it out here. If the culture of the Republican Party has become one where they all feel that they need to please Donald Trump by renaming things after him and building statues and all this other shit, that is a toxic dynamic that I think is eroding the credibility of not just the party but the country, and we got to take that seriously. But as far as whether it's going to happen or not, I cannot see that getting through the Senate, and we're going to make a lot of noise about it just to make sure. Obviously, they put it into a spending bill in the House, so obviously if there's a CR, then that won't happen that way either. But it's petty, it's stupid, and as I said to the press yesterday, it's an insult, not just to the memory of Senator Pell, who's a great leader who's created the Pell Grants, but really to all Rhode Islanders, and that's how I look at it.
You know, Rhode Island is home to the first offshore wind farm. And, recently, the administration put a stop work order, Revolution Wind, which I think is about 80% completed. They were hoping for a due date of 26, about 1,100, 1,200 union workers were involved in that. Things were going very, very well, and then all of a sudden, stop. Your thoughts, and where do we go from here? What role can Congress play in trying to get this project up and running?
You know, the number one issue still that I hear from Rhode Islanders, and I imagine you all hear this too, is still the cost of living, right? And the administration hasn't been making it easier. They're driving up healthcare costs by trying to let the ACA credits expire and cutting Medicaid. They're driving up the cost of groceries with these tariffs, including a 50% tariff on coffee, which we can't even produce in the United States except for in Hawaii a little bit. And driving up the cost of our energy by blocking projects like Revolution Wind. Look, taking a step back, even aside from the environmental benefits, the climate benefits, everything else, Revolution Wind will lower costs for Rhode Islanders dramatically on their electric bills. Rhode Island Energy just announced their rates for this winter. It's 14.8 cents a kilowatt hour is the rate for this winter. Revolution One is contracted to deliver electricity to the grid at 9.8 cents, right? 2/3 the price, year round. And so the cost savings to Rhode Islanders and to our neighbors in Connecticut from Revolution Wind are going to be significant. Why would you block that? Why would you block American-made energy supporting American jobs that will deliver cost savings to consumers? Why would you block that from getting to the grid? And to your point, it's already 80% done. 45 turbines already built, the rest partially built. They're out there, they're spinning. It does not make any sense. And in an environment where we are competing against China in the AI race, which we have to win in order to remain economically dominant over the next century and in order to protect our own national security over the next century, you got to be able to build out more power for data centers. We cannot beat China in the AI race with one hand tied behind our back. So where are we going from here? We obviously had a big win in court on Monday when Judge Lambert in D.C. said that the project can continue. That's good. But there is something else going on here that I think people may not know about that also makes me optimistic. I've put a lot of time and energy in the last few weeks in identifying some Republicans in Congress who are also sympathetic to our cause and engaging them. And we've had some success in that. A lot of people miss this, but there was an attempt by a congressman named Chris Smith from New Jersey. There was an attempt to put an anti-offshore wind amendment in the defense bill on the House floor a couple weeks ago. And me, along with Gabe and Joe Courtney from Connecticut, was very active in this. We really worked to beat that amendment, and we were able to get 16 Republicans to cross the line. Some who are a little more moderate, some who have relationships with organized labor in their states, so we got the unions involved, some who come from Midwestern states where they understand the value of wind energy. And we were able to get 16 of them to vote against the party, their own party, and defeat that anti-offshore wind amendment. That's a big deal. A number of those same Republicans now, we've gotten them to also put in calls to the White House on our behalf, registering their support for Revolution Wind, asking them to meet with Governor McKee and Governor Lamont. Those meetings have started to happen now. I don't think I'm breaking news here. I think McKee and Lamont have said that. And so I think the ice is starting to break a little bit, in part because we've been successful in finding some Republican allies and getting them engaged as well.
So do you think the Trump administration is going to continue the assault on the offshore wind industry?
Look, there's no question that Trump doesn't like clean energy in general, and especially offshore wind. He doesn't like the way that the turbines look from his golf course in Scotland, I guess, and so we all, are at risk of being stuck with higher energy prices because of it. But no, I think where this is headed is they're going to slow walk approving any new projects, but I am hopeful that at least the projects that are already under construction, and maybe even some who have already been fully permitted but construction hasn't begun yet, will be allowed to move forward. Revolution Wind has captured a lot of our time and attention here in Rhode Island, obviously, but in the meantime, knock on wood, they've still allowed Vineyard Wind to proceed. They've still allowed Empire to proceed. Virginia Commonwealth, which is this is the biggest one, it's even bigger than Revolution Wind, that's proceeding. So, cautiously optimistic that a number of these projects that are at least under construction already will be allowed to proceed to completion. And I think that's important because even if then it's a while before any new ones are approved, having some of these developments out there and spinning will help dispel some of the myths and conspiracy theories around offshore wind that you see floating around, right? Flying around. So I think the most important thing is that we get these projects up and running, connected to the grid, providing low-cost, American-made energy, prove the concept, show that it can work at a scale larger than Block Island, and then in the future, hopefully, we'll be able to get back on track.
You mentioned the 50% increase coffee from Brazil.
Yeah.
The President announced last evening another substantial increase in tariffs on products coming into the United States. The federal appeals court ruled recently, I think on a 7-4 decision last month, that the president exceeded his authority by imposing these unilateral tariffs on dozens of countries. Obviously, the president and his administration is going to appeal this to the Supreme Court, and I believe they're going to take it up in November. How confident are you that the Supreme Court will render a fair decision in this case?
I'm not going to try to predict what the Supreme Court is going to do, but I will say that the tariffs are, I think, both legally dubious, but also, more importantly, are bad policy, right? Legally dubious because under Article 1 of the Constitution, it's Congress, not the executive branch, that has the authority to levy tariffs. And the president has been implementing these tariffs under emergency powers that were intended to be very narrow. If there was some sort of a national security threat or something like that the president would have the authority to block imports or something like that of a certain good from a certain country. To argue that there's some sort of an emergency that requires a 10% across-the-board tariff to every single country with every single good is, of course, ridiculous, right? Like, what is the national emergency that requires us to put a tariff on coffee? Like, there isn't one. And he's gone a step further as well in articulating reasons for tariffs that are clearly not a national emergency. He doesn't like the fact that in Brazil they prosecuted the former president for illegally trying to stay in power when he lost re-election. Apparently that hit a little too close to home for President Trump, and so he decided to slap a 50% tariff on Brazil. Now, regardless of your position on Brazilian politics, clearly this is not an emergency to the United States, right? Clearly. So obviously legally dubious. But regardless of how the Supreme Court rules, when Democrats are back in the majority, I am sure that one of the first items on our agenda is going to be to take back full control over tariff policy the way the founders intended, and passing legislation to do that. But setting aside the legalities, this is also terrible policy, right? Costs are already too high, and you hear it from employers, right? You hear it from manufacturers. The cost of their inputs have gone up. You hear it from home builders, the cost of lumber, the cost of steel for nails. I mean, all of it. And again, these are not all Democrats, right? Talk to John White at TACO. He will tell you the tariffs are a huge cost for them. And so you're raising prices on consumers, you're raising prices on businesses, and now you've got this dynamic where companies and industries are having to go try to get in the room with the president and ask for relief. So, he says yesterday, okay, the soybean farmers are really getting hurt by these tariffs. I admit it. So we're going to just take some of the tariff revenue and bail out the soybean farmers. Well, okay, like you do the soybean farmers. What about the other farmers? What about the manufacturers? What about, this, that, the other? And if we have a system now where you have to know a guy in the White House or at Mar-a-Lago to get relief from tariffs, it is going to be small and medium-sized businesses that are hurt the most because they will not have that same level of access. Apple will always be able to get into the White House, but the local manufacturer here in New England that's already struggling to get by isn't going to have that kind of access. So the answer here is not to bail out specific groups or specific industries. The answer is just to get rid of the damn tariffs, lower costs for manufacturers, lower costs for consumers, and make our country more competitive again.
So do you think if the Democrats win the House back in 26, they're going to review and reassess the tariffs that are existing right now?
Yeah, for sure. I think it'll be one of the first things that we do will be to eliminate virtually all of the tariffs that the president has put into place. And I think hopefully Democrats win the Senate back too, but even if we don't, I think there will be a lot of pressure on the Senate to do the same. Because again, like a lot of the senators, particularly from these farm states, like they are hearing it, right? The retaliatory tariffs on American farmers have been absolutely brutal. The other thing I noted, and we were talking about this at our table earlier, one of the things that Chair Powell said when he was here in Rhode Island earlier in the week is, the economy is in a weird place because you don't see employers doing massive layoffs or anything. Like unemployment has been relatively stable, but there's not a lot of new hiring happening either. And there's not a lot of capital investment happening either. And the reason for that is the uncertainty, right? Like companies are kind of waiting to see what happens with tariffs, what happens with immigration and everything else before they decide to invest in new plants or big ticket items or hire a bunch of new people. And so the economy is kind of in this stasis right now. Just having some predictability again, like even if you don't get rid of all of the tariffs, even if there's just some predictability and they're not being changed by tweet like every other day, will give businesses a lot more certainty and make it easier for them to invest. So yeah, I think that taking back the control over tariffs that the framers of the Constitution gave to Congress will absolutely be one of our top priorities when we get in.
Housing affordability is a big issue here in Rhode Island, New England, and all over the country. And there is one piece of good news, I think, is the bipartisan piece of legislation filed by Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren and Republican Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina. Road to Housing affordability. It's a Road to Housing Act, but it's affordability that they really addressed. Your thoughts? It passed unanimous in the Senate Banking Committee, which was very encouraging to see bipartisanship on such an important issue that we're all talking about, and yet we struggle and what are the solutions? This might be one of many, but Road to Housing Act I think is a good start. Your thoughts on how this is going to go through what impact do you think it's going to have on Rhode Island or throughout New England?
No, it's a great bill, and I hope it does pass through the House. Look, we need to increase our housing supply both nationally and regionally, and I think there's a lot of different facets to that. A lot of it needs to be dealt with at the local level because one of the fundamental problems with housing is that everybody wants more housing, but nobody wants it in their neighborhood. And so local leaders need to make some tougher choices about allowing development in appropriate areas to build out housing. But even in areas where you have a local government that is very pro-housing, and I'll use Providence and Pawtucket as an example, where the mayors, the councils, they've done zoning changes, they've done things to try to encourage more development of housing. It's still tough to make some of these projects pencil out, right? And the tariffs don't help, and the immigration stuff doesn't help because costs are going up. But it's hard to make these projects pencil out. especially if you're building projects that are meant to serve kind of the missing middle and middle income renters and home buyers. And so that's where the federal government, I think, can come in and play more of a role by expanding the historic preservation tax credit, which is more than 50. Historic preservation is the name, but more than 50% of that actually goes into housing, right? Like it makes like a lot of these mill to housing conversions possible. We should be funding that more. We should be funding the low-income housing tax credit more. And I think also looking at smart ways to encourage more development around public transit. There was sort of a program that was announced in the Biden administration that didn't really take off that I thought was an interesting one that would have basically provided extra tax credits for building housing close to train stations and bus stops and stuff, already dense areas, right? And so, for example, like for a building like the Superman building, something like that could be incredibly useful, right? So I think the federal government can help with funding to make some of these projects pencil out more, and especially understanding that it's not just low-income housing, but also sort of that missing middle that we need to deal with. But we also got to continue at the local level to encourage cities and towns to allow more development. And I think I know some controversial adventures in Massachusetts around that, and in certain parts of Rhode Island. But it's good that we're having those conversations.
You know, the NIH, National Institute of Health, National Science Foundation funding is a key engine here in Rhode Island for economic growth. About $500 million is generated through all of the funding that we get. And your thoughts and what you're hearing from NIH, National Science Foundation, on cuts or programs that have been frozen going forward?
Yeah, so I think everybody in the room understands how important it is that we continue to fund research, not only so that we can continue to lead the world in developing cures to diseases and making quality of life better for all Americans, but also that the economic impact of research funding is especially important here in New England, right? Like so much of this innovative, life-saving research is being done here in Rhode Island, in Massachusetts, and Connecticut, and other New England states. So we have to protect this. And there's two things going on here. The first is they came in and they tried to say we're going to do a across-the-board cut of NIH funding, what's called indirect costs. Indirect costs are basically funding on top of the core research that is meant to help universities and hospitals with the overhead, right? So the lab space, the administrative staff, the janitors that clean up the labs, right? There's a certain amount of overhead. And they came in and they said, well, we're just going to cap that overhead at 15% across the board. Like, that would have been absolutely devastating. And we've pushed back against that. We were able to enlist, again, some like red state representatives and senators. Katie Britt from Alabama, who used to live in Rhode Island, by the way, because her husband played for the Patriots. Like, she actually was vocal on this, and credit to her, because I think the University of Alabama was in her ear saying, whoa, whoa, whoa. So at least for now, that idea, I think, has been shelved, although you never know with this administration. It may come back at some point. But like, the fact of the matter is, like, it is expensive to operate lab space. It is expensive to kind of do all the work that makes the research possible. And so just like an arbitrary across-the-board cap doesn't make sense. The way it works now, by the way, is that each individual research project negotiates with the federal government and shows what their costs are so that it's actually tailored to the specific institution and the specific project. So I think we've beaten that back for now, in part, again, because we've been able to recruit some red state help on that. But the second thing that's going on, very similar to tariffs, is the individual targeting of individual universities for unrelated reasons. And, like, don't get me wrong, like, anti-Semitism on college campuses is a real problem. There are other issues in higher education that are real problems. But to say we're going to hold back research for curing childhood cancer until you deal with this other unrelated thing, Like, that's insane, right? Like, the better way to deal with these other issues is to have a robust Department of Education that provides oversight, to have a robust civil rights division of the Department of Justice that can crack down on discrimination, right? Like, all, by the way, things that the administration has diverted resources away from, right? But to say we're going to use cancer research as leverage for some other issue is obviously insane. And there's a lot of politics in this too, right? Like, why have they gone after Harvard but not after Yale? Well, I mean, who knows? Like, Yale may have some alumni who are well placed in the administration or have memberships at Mar-a-Lago or whatever, but like the arbitrary nature of it, again, is just completely chaotic and nonsensical. So I think we got to continue to be vocal about it. I mean, it's not a coincidence that funding for medical research is one of the things that we have put into the discussion around the CR. Like, the ACA credits have gotten most of the attention, for good reason, but we have also included medical research, Medicaid funding, and some language around rescissions in sort of our list of requests for the CR. So we are going to continue to harp on this issue, number one, because it's important, but number two, because obviously politically we are on very firm ground when we talk about supporting research into cures for life-threatening diseases.
You mentioned that you hope to get the House back in 26, but if you look at some of the polls, it's pretty discouraging for Democrats. CNN just came out with a poll this past week and said that on crime, immigration, and the economy, Republicans have the lead, and the image of the Democratic Party, according to one poll just recently, is at an all-time low favorability, about 23%. What do Democrats need to do between now and 26 to recapture the House and recapture the imagination of people to say the Democrats are there fighting for, you just said, health care and other important issues. But it seems that message is not getting out.
Yeah. I think that the Democratic Party nationally needs to be more like the Democratic Party in Rhode Island. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. Did you know that there are more Democratic state legislators in Rhode Island who won last year in seats that Donald Trump also won, districts that Donald Trump also won, than any other state in the country? We have 16 state reps and state senators in Rhode Island who represent districts that Trump won last year. And how did we do that in Rhode Island? How do we do that? And by the way, like, even if you compare us to other blue, quote unquote, blue states, right? Vermont or Massachusetts, wherever else, we do better at electing Democrats in purple or even red districts here than anywhere else in the country. And so how do we do that in Rhode Island? Well, number one, we recruit candidates who really represent their districts well. If you look at who those 16 reps and senators are, right, it's people like Todd Padalano, who's the second in command in the Cranston Police Department, has been a police officer in Cranston forever. He was just elected to a state Senate district in Cranston that Trump won by like 20 points. Right? It's people like Megan Cotter down in South County who, she works for a seafood distributor. She works her tail off. She focuses on issues like preventing forest fires, which no one else in Rhode Island was talking about, but is actually a big deal in her rural district, right? And so I think recruiting candidates who are good listeners and who understand and represent their districts well is part of it. I think the other thing that you find in Rhode Island that we do right is, Democrats in Rhode Island, we tend to be very strong on labor issues and economic issues. But we also, most Democrats in Rhode Island are very pro-public safety. We understand we have to support police, support first responders. We kind of focus on the bread and butter issues more as opposed to whatever like the outrage of the day is. And I think as a national party, that's kind of what we need to get back to. We need to create space to have more candidates running who really represent where they come from and are not just like cookie cutter DC candidates. And I think to your point about public safety, look, I'm on the Homeland Security Committee. I think we have an opportunity here to reclaim the mantle of being the party that will keep you safe, because if we do this right, we can say we are for community policing, we are for rule of law and due process. And what would you rather have? would you rather have more funding for community policing for officers who are from your community, policing your community, or would you rather have a bunch of kids from South Carolina in the National Guard come into your town and do policing that way? I think most people would rather have community policing from their own community than that. And so I think we have an opportunity here, but we have to seize it, and we have to be clear about what we're for. The last thing I'll say is this. Part of this is we need to have a proactive policy agenda that we come out with as Democrats that is not just being anti-Trump. And I've talked with Hakeem about this. I've talked with other members of our leadership about this. I think our hope and expectation is that we will come out with a House Democrats policy platform probably early next year. And it will include rolling back some of the abuses of the Trump administration, like rolling back tariffs and rolling back Medicaid cuts and all that. But I also hope that it includes a proactive vision for how we would do public safety, for how we will do things like permitting reform so that it's easier to build housing and easier to build energy, and maybe some outside of the box ideas as well. I've been trying to convince everyone down there. I've got a bill that guarantees 10 days of paid vacation for all American workers. Every country in Europe guarantees at least 20 days. In the United States, we guarantee 0. I'm telling you guys, the polling on this is off the charts. I didn't know that when I put the bill in. It was just an idea from a staff member of mine, and I put it in, and then we polled it later, and it was like, oh. I think there are things like that we can present that are new ideas, that are a little different, that'll resonate with people. But we have to be proactive, and I think we have to learn the lessons of Rhode Island, which is don't just have cookie-cutter candidates, have candidates who really represent where they're from and reclaim the mantle of not just being better on the economy, but public safety as well.
I just had one quick final question, international. Just in the last couple of weeks, we've seen Russia invade the airspace of Poland with drones, and just recently invading the airspace of Estonia. Are we heading towards a mini Munich that he's just going to keep going further and further until somebody says, no more?
Yeah, the only thing that Putin understands is strength, right? And so the best thing that we can do to contain Vladimir Putin is continue to support NATO, continue to support Ukraine. I think I will give credit where it's due. I think Trump was right to say that that the Ukrainians can take back all of the territory that Putin seized. I think he was right to say that Poland and other NATO countries have every right to shoot down Russian drones and planes that enter their airspace. Putin will take advantage of what he perceives as weakness, and he will respond to what he perceives as strength. And as has been the case from the beginning, that doesn't mean that we need to commit U.S. troops, to Ukraine or anything like that. But we got to continue to give them the tools that they need to win the war, because that is the only thing that Putin will understand. And Russia's economy is not doing well. We should absolutely pass this sanctions bill that has 80 co-sponsors in the Senate. We should do that. We should put the pressure on. And, again, not just Putin, but like the world is watching, and we can't give an inch.
Well, with that, we just want to thank the Congress. Very enlightening, very informative discussion, and we have a couple of minutes for photos with the Congressman, and you could ask your question as you come up and get a photo with the Congressman. But I just want to thank all of you again for being here today. Thank you for your support of the New England Council, and look forward to seeing you at our next event. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Jim. That was great. I appreciate it.